Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep into the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
The father of the atomic bomb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've provided us with a really interesting mix of articles and notes about him.
It's a lot.
Everything from his early years
Uh-huh.
to the Manhattan Project
Right.
and the ethical dilemmas that he faced.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story.
So let's get started.
What I find so fascinating about Oppenheimer is that he really embodies the incredible power and responsibility that comes with scientific discovery.
Yeah.
He wasn't just this brilliant physicist.
Right.
He actually grappled with the moral consequences of his work,
Yeah.
which is something that still resonates with us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The sources really paint a picture of a complicated guy,
Uh-huh.
even contradictory. I mean,
Yeah.
here's someone publishing physics papers at 23,
Wow.
like a certified genius.
Yeah.
But then there's a story about him trying to poison his tutor at Cambridge.
Right.
It's almost hard to reconcile those two things.
It certainly points to a complex inner world,
Mm-hmm.
very driven,
Mm-hmm.
but also battling some inner turmoil.
Yeah.
There's an anecdote about Oppenheimer lying on his floor groaning in anguish because he felt inadequate at experimental work.
Oh, wow.
I think a lot of us, even if we're not theoretical physicists, can relate to feeling overwhelmed sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds have their struggles.
For sure.
But then things seem to shift for him when he goes to Göttingen University in Germany.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like he finally found his intellectual home.
Right.
He was studying under Max Born,
Uh-huh.
surrounded by other brilliant physicists like
Yeah.
Paul Dirac and John von Neumann.
Wow.
He was thriving in that environment.
Yeah.
It really highlights the importance of finding the right intellectual community.
For sure. I think environment's huge.
Yeah.
But the next chapter in Oppenheimer's life takes a dramatic turn.
Oh, yeah.
This is where the path to the atomic bomb begins.
And the course of history is forever altered.
It's fascinating to think that back in the early 20th century, most scientists thought creating a bomb from atomic energy was pure science fiction.
Really?
Oh,
Huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ernest Rutherford, one of Oppenheimer's mentors,
Right.
even said that the idea of harnessing power from atoms was moonshine.
Wow.
Even Einstein famously said
Yeah.
that there was not the slightest indication that we could ever tap into that kind of energy.
Wow. They really thought it was impossible.
They did.
Uh.
But then a cascade of crucial discoveries completely upended that conventional wisdom.
Like what?
Well, first there was the discovery of the neutron in 1932.
Okay.
And then Leo Szilard proposed this revolutionary idea of a nuclear chain reaction.
So suddenly what seemed impossible was within reach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the moment when Oppenheimer learns about nuclear fission.
Okay.
Initially, he was skeptical,
Uh-huh.
but then he witnessed the experiment himself.
Yeah.
And that's when it clicked for him.
What clicked?
The incredible potential, not just for generating power, but also for creating a weapon of unprecedented destructive force.
It's at that point that the story takes a darker turn, right?
It does.
Yeah.
The possibility of a weapon enters the picture,
Yeah.
and the stakes become astronomically high.
For sure.
Fast forward a few years,
Okay.
and we're in the midst of World War II,
Right.
with the Manhattan Project in full swing.
Yeah.
This top-secret project
Ugh.
had one singular objective:
What's that?
build an atomic bomb before Nazi Germany could.
Oh, wow.
And the person they chose to lead this monumental effort
Yeah.
was J. Robert Oppenheimer.
It seems like a surprising choice, given what we know about him.
You'd think they'd want someone, maybe a little more conventional.
Right.
But General Groves, the military head of the Manhattan Project, saw something special in Oppenheimer.
What was that?
He recognized his genius.
Okay.
This ability to grasp the big picture,
Yeah.
but also dive into the technical nitty-gritty. There's even a quote where Groves calls Oppenheimer
Yeah.
a real genius
Wow.
who knows about everything.
He said that.
He did, except apparently sports.
Interesting.
It speaks to Oppenheimer's incredible intellect and charisma.
Yeah.
He could command the respect of these brilliant scientists,
Right.
inspire them with his vision,
Mm-hmm.
and tackle the complex scientific challenges that they faced.
What a challenge.
The Manhattan Project was on a scale never seen before.
Yeah.
Oppenheimer initially figured he'd need a small team of scientists.
Uh-huh.
How many?
I don't know, like 10?
It ended up involving over 600,000 people.
Wow, that's incredible.
The logistics were mind-boggling,
Yeah.
but they had a clear objective:
Which was?
unlock the secrets of the atom,
Okay.
and harness its power for a weapon that could potentially end the war.
It's scary to think about.
So let's delve into the science behind the bomb for a moment. Our sources go into some really fascinating detail about fission, critical mass, and the technical nuts and bolts.
Yeah, it's complicated stuff.
It is.
So at its core, a nuclear bomb is a device that sets off an uncontrolled chain reaction.
Right.
And to achieve that, you need a critical mass
Right.
of fissile material,
Okay.
either uranium-235 or plutonium-239.
Got it.
Think of it like splitting a log of wood,
Okay.
but on an atomic level.
I see.
When enough of this material is brought together in the right way,
Yeah.
it releases a mind-boggling amount of energy in the form of an explosion.
Right.
It's actually the same principle that powers nuclear power plants,
Oh, interesting.
just on a much, much larger scale
Right.
and without the control mechanism.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And the sources mentioned that they were working on two different bomb designs.
Oh, really?
There was the gun-type bomb,
Okay.
which was simpler but less efficient,
Uh-huh.
and the implosion-type bomb,
Okay.
which was more complex but far more powerful. It's incredible to think that they were essentially inventing these techniques from scratch.
Yeah.
They were pushing the boundaries of physics and engineering as they went,
Wow.
solving problems that had never been tackled before.
They were really in uncharted territory.
Absolutely.
Huh.
One detail that really stood out to me
Yeah.
was that they actually needed whale oil
Whale oil.
to lubricate the barrel of the gun-type bomb.
Really?
Who would have thought?
That's wild.
Then there's the discovery of plutonium.
Okay.
This new element turned out to be an even better fuel for a bomb,
Uh-huh.
but it required the more complex implosion design to work effectively.
I see.
They eventually figured out how to manipulate critical mass through density and compression,
Okay.
leading to the creation of what they called the urchin device.
The urchin device.
Yeah, imagine trying to crush a soda can perfectly from all sides at the exact same time.
Okay.
That's the level of precision they were dealing with.
That's intense.
It is a reminder that they were operating at the very cutting edge of science,
Right.
constantly pushing the limits of what was known.
Yeah.
And all of this leads up to the Trinity test.
The first detonation of an atomic bomb.
Exactly.
Wow.
It must have been an incredibly intense moment in history.
I can't even imagine.
The sources describe this immense pressure to test the bomb before the Potsdam Conference,
Okay.
where Truman was meeting with Churchill and Stalin
Yeah.
to discuss the post-war world.
Right.
Oppenheimer himself was apparently incredibly anxious in the lead-up to the test.
Really?
He was even reciting verses from the Bhagavad Gita to try to calm his nerves.
Wow. The weight of responsibility must have been immense.
And then there was this chilling possibility,
What's that?
one that even Oppenheimer worried about,
Oh,
that the bomb might ignite the atmosphere
ignite the atmosphere.
and literally set the world on fire.
Wait, they thought that was a possibility?
There were genuine concerns at the time,
Oh,
based on the physics they were working with. They thought the bomb could trigger uncontrolled fusion in the atmosphere,
really?
essentially turning it into a giant fireball.
That's terrifying.
Thankfully, most scientists quickly dismissed the idea,
Okay.
but it's a chilling thought nonetheless.
It is.
And ironically, the concept of fusion weapons,
Yeah.
which Oppenheimer later fiercely opposed,
Right.
would become a reality soon after.
It's a chilling reminder of the unknown territory they were navigating.
Absolutely.
So the Trinity test goes ahead.
Yeah, and the bomb works.
It's a success.
A horrifying success.
Yeah.
And just a few weeks later, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are bombed, ushering in the atomic age.
It's a pivotal turning point in human history, and one that Oppenheimer would grapple with for the rest of his life.
In our next segment, we'll delve deeper into the aftermath of the bomb and the legacy he left behind.
It's a fascinating shift, isn't it?
It really is.
He went from gracing the cover of Time magazine as a scientific triumph
Yeah.
to become a figure deeply troubled by the potential consequences of his work.
The sources talk about how Oppenheimer became a key advisor to the government
Uh-huh.
on nuclear policy,
Right.
leading something called the General Advisory Committee.
I've heard of that.
And he used that platform to advocate for international control of atomic energy
Okay.
and warn against a nuclear arms race.
You can really see that internal conflict emerging.
Yeah,
Here he is, this brilliant physicist who unlocked the secrets of the atom,
right.
created this incredibly powerful weapon,
Mm-hmm.
and yet he's advocating for restraint and caution,
Right.
even pushing back against the technology he helped to develop.
It's like, I guess when you're that close to something with that much destructive potential,
Yeah.
you can't help but think about the consequences.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He understood the power of the atom,
Uh-huh.
but also recognized its potential for terrible misuse.
It's really a powerful part of his story.
His transition from scientist to conscience.
And then things escalate even further with the development of the hydrogen bomb. I think they were calling it the super at the time.
Yes, the super.
Right.
A weapon far more powerful than these atomic bombs dropped on Japan,
Right.
utilizing fusion rather than fission
Wow.
to release unimaginable destructive energy.
Oppenheimer was vehemently opposed to its development,
Really?
both for ethical reasons
Okay.
and because he feared it would trigger a catastrophic arms race.
Yeah.
Our sources describe this really intense debate surrounding the hydrogen bomb. Truman's administration was determined to develop it,
Yeah?
despite Oppenheimer's objections.
Oh.
And in 1952,
Yeah?
the first hydrogen bomb, Ivy Mike, was detonated in the Marshall Islands.
I remember reading about that.
It was 400 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
It's unbelievable.
It's a chilling reminder of the escalating stakes of the Cold War.
And it's a turning point in Oppenheimer's story.
It is.
His opposition to the hydrogen bomb
Right.
put him directly at odds with some very powerful figures in the government.
They started questioning his loyalty, right?
Exactly.
And digging into his past.
His previous affiliations,
Yeah.
particularly his connections to the Communist Party,
Yeah.
came under intense scrutiny.
Right, this was the height of McCarthyism,
Uh-huh.
and anxieties about communist infiltration were running high.
Absolutely.
It all culminated in this very public security hearing in 1954.
Right.
They essentially accused him of treason,
Wow.
using his past political activities
Ah.
and even his personal relationships as evidence against him.
It was a very public and very controversial affair.
It was.
Imagine being Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
going from national hero to accused traitor in just a few years.
Yeah.
The pressure must have been immense.
And to top it all off,
Yeah,
they revoked his security clearance.
that's rough.
There's another Time magazine cover from this period,
Really?
but it's a far cry from the heroic image we saw earlier.
Right.
It's a much more somber portrayal,
Yeah.
reflecting this cloud of suspicion and controversy hanging over him.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly public opinion can shift, especially in times of heightened political tension.
There's a story about Oppenheimer being sent the script for a play about him during this period.
Oh, really?
It depicted him as this tortured soul,
Okay.
realizing he'd been doing the work of the devil.
Wow.
Apparently, Oppenheimer vehemently rejected that interpretation.
Interesting.
He felt the situation was far more complex than the play portrayed.
He refused to be painted as a simple villain.
Right.
He understood the gravity of his actions, but he also saw the historical context,
Yeah.
the immense pressure of the war,
Uh-huh.
the fear that the Nazis might develop the bomb first.
Right. It was a complicated situation.
Absolutely.
And he wasn't going to let it be simplified.
You've got to admire his willingness to stand up for himself and his perspective, even when he was being vilified.
Absolutely.
And despite the personal attacks and setbacks,
Yeah.
he never stopped speaking out against the dangers of the nuclear arms race. He continued to advocate for international cooperation
Uh-huh.
and a more peaceful future.
Right.
There's this incredibly poignant quote from Oppenheimer in 1965,
Yeah.
where he reflected on the need for arms control.
What did he say?
He said, "It should have been done the day after Trinity."
Wow, it's a powerful statement of regret.
It is.
Recognizing that maybe things could have been different.
It shows his willingness to acknowledge the potential for error
Yeah.
and the need to learn from past mistakes.
Which is a lesson that remains incredibly relevant today.
Absolutely.
As we face new technological advancements with their own sets of potential risks and rewards.
Yeah,
I think Oppenheimer's story offers some valuable insights.
it really does.
Let's explore those connections in our final segment. We're back for our final look at the life and legacy of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has, from his early brilliance
Right.
to the creation of the atomic bomb and his subsequent struggle with the moral ramifications.
Yeah, what a story.
It makes you wonder, what would Oppenheimer say about the world today?
It's a question worth pondering. We live in an age of unprecedented technological advancement,
Yeah.
with breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, gene editing,
Right.
and fields we probably haven't even imagined yet.
Exactly.
All of them carrying the potential to reshape our world.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse, yeah.
And just like Oppenheimer grappled with unleashing atomic energy,
Mm-hmm.
we're now facing our own ethical dilemmas.
We are.
How do we ensure these new technologies are used for good and not for harm?
That's the question.
How do we prevent unintended consequences that could spiral out of control?
Precisely. It's like Oppenheimer's story is a cautionary tale,
Right.
reminding us that scientific progress without careful ethical consideration can have devastating, unforeseen consequences.
He was particularly vocal about the need for international cooperation
He was.
and arms control, which feels incredibly relevant today,
It does.
with threats like cyber warfare and climate change looming large. Yeah.
Global solutions are more critical than ever.
It makes you wonder what Oppenheimer would have to say about these issues.
It really does.
If he were alive today, what would his stance be on AI,
Yeah.
gene editing, and all these other advancements that hold both promise and peril?
It's hard to know.
I think he would urge us to proceed with caution,
Probably.
to consider the long-term consequences of our actions,
Right?
and to engage in honest, open dialogue about the ethical implications of these powerful technologies.
You're probably right. He was a fierce advocate for the free exchange of ideas.
He was.
And for scientists speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
I doubt he'd shy away from challenging assumptions or
Right.
confronting uncomfortable truths.
He understood the power of knowledge,
He did.
but he also understood that knowledge without wisdom can be a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
He'd likely emphasize the need for international cooperation and dialogue,
Right.
just as he called for global control of atomic energy. He'd recognize that the challenges we face today.
Require collective action and a shared sense of responsibility.
His story is such a powerful reminder
It is,
that scientific progress must be guided by a strong moral compass
for sure.
and a deep understanding of its potential impact on humanity.
Absolutely.
It's not enough to simply chase breakthroughs.
Yeah.
We have to think about the consequences,
Right.
the potential for both good and bad.
So what stands out to you about Oppenheimer's story?
Ooh, that's a good question. Is it the sheer brilliance of his mind,
Yeah.
the moral dilemmas he faced,
Uh-huh.
or the fact that he was both a hero and a figure of controversy?
All of that.
For me, it's the enduring relevance of his story,
Yeah.
the questions he wrestled with, the
yeah.
power of science,
Mm.
the responsibility of those who wield it,
Yeah.
the urgent need for ethical considerations.
Those are questions that continue to haunt us today.
They do.
It's a story that challenges us to think deeply about the implications of scientific discovery
Right.
and to ensure that our pursuit of knowledge ultimately serves the betterment of humanity.
Beautifully said.
Oppenheimer's legacy is a powerful reminder that the choices we have today
Yeah.
will shape the world of tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Let's try to make those choices wisely.
A big thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the world of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
It was a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.
I certainly did.
Until next time.